strategic sourcing part. In the last 15 minutes are left for you the question and answers. To avoid the echo, I would again request that you please type up your questions and I'll be very happy to answer each one of them. Well, friend, with this, now let me go down to today's agenda. So what we plan to cover up is the overview of strategic sourcing. What is strategic sourcing? Because this subject has become very popular in the last 2 years, I have seen in India. Many companies are trying to focus on strategic sourcing. We'll walk through this. We'll try to understand what is strategic sourcing, why implement strategic sourcing, and in short I'm going to call as SS. Then next question comes developing a strategic sourcing. Sourcing strategy is also important around. The two words, one is called strategic sourcing, one is called sourcing strategy. I'll try to clarify both the issues around. Then the next one we'll try to cover up is a roadmap to implement strategic sourcing. If you want to set up strategic sourcing in your organizations, what is the plan for that around? How is the mapping going to be, roadmap going to be for that? Critical success factor also I'll try to touch around. So well, friend, with this, let me start first giving you a very basic idea about the procurement process. I mean, you know, in a procurement, there are two components. Sourcing, second component is buying. To me, buying is very basic. I mean, that means you have identified a supplier, you know the need, you know the supplier. It is just placing of orders. So if you can see in the buying cycle, it is nothing but placing of orders, receipt of goods, and payments. That's why some of the softwares called P2P is nothing but it covers only the buying part. But there's another component which is called sourcing. So sourcing is the one where you're trying to identify supply source. So in sourcing, there are different types of sourcing. I'll try to walk through with you on that, whether it's a reactive type, which is called operational sourcing, tactical sourcing, and strategic sourcing. So I'll walk through with you on that, what type of sourcings are there, and the one we are talking about will be the focus would be on strategic sourcing. Now, traditionally, if you look around, sourcing means identification of new and potential supplier. So that is how we understand sourcing definition. Now, the categories of sourcing, reactive. So if I go back to 1970s, 80s, 90s, focus was all the time on reactive. You send a request to me. I know from my history what suppliers can provide. I place an order for them. So very reactive type. So that's why the profile of procurement people was very low. Slowly it became tactical. That means we took some idea of developing long-term arrangements with some suppliers for basically low-value items and low-risk items. So those items which are low values, low risk, like office supplies, some of the items in office, MRO items, you made a tactical long-term arrangements around. So it was basically a tactical approach. It's not a very long-term approach, a short-term approach around. While reactive is only as on today, it's a very operational approach. So I just want to make it clear before I move further. The two components, sourcing, buying. Sourcing has got three types: reactive, tactical, and strategic. Now, the definition of strategic, it has got, keep in mind, strategic sourcing is a methodology. Sourcing as a whole is a methodology, whether it's a reactive or tactical or strategic. So it's a methodology, it's a process. But it is again, when we say strategic, in a reactive it is a purely process. Tactical is also to some extent process, but when it comes to strategic, it has got three components. One component is called organized. Second is called collaborative. Third is called structured. So when we say collaborate, organize, that means it is not a one-time thing. You have to do it on an ongoing basis. If today we do strategic sourcing, enter into contract with suppliers, then if I say I've done my job, That's not the way. It has to be looked into market all the time. As you know, the new suppliers are coming into the market. Market scenarios are changing. Supply market is very dynamic. So that is why I'm saying it's very organized. So you have to do it on an ongoing enterprise process. The next one comes the systematic part. So systematic means there is a process, there's a procedures, and that procedure means you have to follow step 1, step 2, step 3 up to step 7. So these are the steps, so it is called systematic. So everybody has to follow irrespective of the category, whether it's a direct procurement, indirect procurement, you need to follow those steps around. It's called systematic. Collaborative means, if you look back traditionally, procurement has been very silo function. Collaborative means you work together. You work together with your partners. Partners could be in-house. Partners could be outside. In-house mean those with whom you work, for whom you procure. For the engineering people, for the technology people, your internal customers. So you work with them. So they are part of the team. External means you're working with the suppliers. So keep in mind, strategic sourcing has got 3 components. It's organized. It's a very based on, it's an analytical approach. It's a methodology, but based on analytic. Analytic is again drives from spend analysis. So 3 components: organize, systematic, and collaborate. Collaborative means you're working with your team. That's the way to work together. Now let me work further on this. It's good to know a little bit historical part. Up to 70s, it was all reactive sourcing. If I look in India, up to 1990 has been reactive. Now in the last 10 years, last decade, changes have started happening around. During my stay in Europe and US in those 25-30 years, 80 was the time of re-engineering. I moved to Europe in 80 sometime, and that's the time we were all the time focusing on re-engineering. Re-engineering the process, re-engineering the methodologies, and you know very much in those days, auto industry in US was coming under big competition from Japan. So in those times they were focusing a lot on re-engineering, how to cut my cost, how to make my products competitive with the Asian supplier. So then all the time the question came, how do I cut my cost? It became very popular in 80s to cut down, re-engineer the process. Staff were being laid out sometime. But then somebody came up, guys, 50 to 80% of my cost structure comes from procurement. Staff is only contributing 20%. So even if I make a re-engineering of my staff activities around, out of 20% I can make saving of 5%, 10%. But if I take the big chunk, which is the procurement part, if any saving I can bring there of 15, 20%, it straight goes to the bottom line. So this is how in 1980 it started picking up in US and Europe, the whole concept of strategic sourcing. And it became more easier because of technology. Had there been no technology, possibly this would have got delayed. That's why in India, since many companies have not really made use of technologies around, so strategic sourcing, if I look back, since I came 3 to 4 years back around, I see this is becoming popular in the last 2-3 years, strategic sourcing. Now this is again 7-step base. I mean the original was 7 steps. I'll walk through with you those. Some people have made it 6 steps like Deloitte's. Some people say if I look from the top level, from the senior management level, it is a 5-step. But at the end of the day, whether you call 5 steps, 6 step or 7 step, it covers everything around. I'll walk through with you all those. Now, some companies who adopted strategic sourcing did not succeed well. I would say 60 to 70% did very well. I mean, if I look at those case studies, the saving was to the tune of 25%. Those who did not do well, the reasons for them were, I'm trying to touch this because some of you might be thinking of implementing strategic sourcing. I want to tell you what could be the pitfalls. The first could be the philosophical tension. Philosophical is some people think competition, that's the only way to survive. While other side of the game is collaboration. Work closely with the supplier. So if I look from the public sector, for them competition is the only way. But you also know even after competition, still there are too many scams around. Not necessarily we are getting the best price. So some companies have taken a hybrid approach of competition and collaborations. Again, I'm calling the word, in the good old days, we used to keep supplier at arm's length. Go through competition, who gives me the best price, I take it. But now the concept has moved from arm's length to partnership. That's what we're talking about, collaboration, working together. So that's a philosophical tension was there. Sometimes rigor was not there around. I know it came up in 80s in the Western world, but some people were trying to make a shortcut. Procurement people say, oh guys, I know this supplier. So there was for the namesake strategic sourcing, but there was no sincerity to do the market survey, to do the supplier study around. So this is why strategic sourcing did not fly much. The next was, I think, the tools and technology part. I mean, the tools and technology which came up, if I look back 25, 30 years back, they were not really matured enough. But now if you look back in the last decade, the tools are much more smarter. You can get real-time data. Spend categories have improved around. I remember my own case, we were trying to analyze the data. For us, office supply was a major spend around, and we were trying to analyze it. And then we found there were too many varieties in the papers and office supplies. How do I do it? And that's where we came up with the concept of categories. United Nations developed called United Nations Common Coding System those days, which became UNSPSC. I mean, this was my baby, which I started in '88 in building it up, and later on we gave it to an NGO to really market it. So this was the one we worked on. We thought we need to develop a lingua franca. If you don't have a lingua franca, we cannot really identify the spend part. So to do the spend part, the lingua franca which came, UNSPSC, categorizations, so this is how we worked on it. Well friend, up to now what I've done with you is understanding the different type of sourcing, little bit historical part of strategic sourcing, and now what we say is, what are the goals for this? Strategic sourcing, I know one or two people have sent me the question in advance. The goal is to reduce the total cost of materials and services. Obviously, we are going into this game, so naturally, first focus is on the cost. I'm using the word total cost. I'm not calling price. So you have to understand what is total cost of ownership. Second is leveraging internal expenditures while rationalizing the supply base. So I have a supply base. I might be getting same item from 10 suppliers. Can I rationalize it? Can I leverage the spend part? Can I cut down my costs around? The third part is optimizing internal and external supply chain. I have a supply chain within my office, within my organization. I have a supply chain with my suppliers. Suppliers have a supply chain. How do I make it much more integrated? The next one comes the total cost of ownership. I'll touch on this. The next is the building organized competitive position through continuous improvement. As I told you in the definition of strategic sourcing, there has to be a continuous improvement. If it is not continuous, it's not a one-time job. Don't think that I have done partnership with one supplier for next 10 years. No. You will have to go through it. You could do it after 2 years, 3 years, but there has to be done on a regular basis. So primary objectives, again, I think I've touched already. I'll just skip over this. Here, understand the total cost of ownership. I'm trying to clarify some of the terms first before I jump to the process part of doing strategic sourcing. So far, most of the procurement people, when they select a supplier, the criteria is price. But I'm sure many of you by now know we are moving from price concept to total cost of ownership. Some people call life cycle costing when it comes to equipment. So it is not the purchase price. It is the price what I pay for the practice. Some process requires a long process around, is a cost around. Some needs, again simple example I will take up in our daily life is motor vehicle. If I buy a car, one car may cost you a little higher, 10%, but may save you on the fuel side. So if you look around the life of 5 years or 6 years of your car, how much you're going to spend on the fuel? If fuel saving is there, the mileage is better, so that is also part of my total cost. Some vehicles require more maintenance, some require less maintenance. If I add up all those over the lifespan of 10 years or 5 years of my vehicle, how much is going to cost me? So the TCO concept is becoming very popular in most of the company. But the only negative part is to do the TCO, you need various data around. If I take case of car, I have to understand the mileage. I have to understand the downtime of the cars. How much is the maintenance cost? All those elements have to be put together to work out my TCO. So keep in mind, today's concept is not on today's price, it is the TCO concept. Let's say if I'm in an automobile company, I buy a part and I know if this part will work for whatever 200,000 kilometers without any breakdown, great. Another one I have to change after every 50,000. So that means is extra cost for the buyer. So you need to work out the total cost of ownership. Here is again the cross-functional team. What is cross-functional? I'm trying to clarify a few terms before we walk through the steps or the methodology of strategic sourcing. Traditionally what you do is you have an engineer, you have a materials manager, they will tell you guys this is what we need. I'm a planning person, I'll say okay for next month production, I need these items, it goes to purchasing agents. Then I procure it and give it to the store people. It's a very silo function. In a strategic sourcing, we make a team. So there's a team leader. Team leader make a cross-function team. People from finance, people from logistics, people from marketing, people from engineering, people from R&D. We work together. It's a joint responsibility. So this is where we call it's a cross-functional approach. It is not a silo approach. It's a cross-functional approach. So I'm also touching this part on sourcing strategy. Now the sourcing strategies also we need to understand. Sorry guys, we have just missed a few slides. Now coming back to source, now you heard the word from me, strategic sourcing. And the next one was sourcing strategy. So the sourcing strategy is how do I source it? Sourcing from the supplier angle, who could be my partners, who could be my leverage items, where I have to manage the risk. And the last one is, this one is called around centralize. Should I do centralize? Should I decentralize? Should I simplify? That's the way it is around. Now this is again based on Kralzik, Peter Kralzik, who was the first person in 1983 who came up with the Harvard Business Review. He split all the procurement into 4 matrix, 2x2 matrix. So this is how it is based on. Now ease of implementations. Now if you look around the spectrum of procurement strategies, one side is a volume concentration. You try to consolidate, is the most easiest job. The last difficult part is the relationship building. So relationship building, this is where in the strategic sourcing we focus a lot on relationship. We also focus on global sourcing because we are not now like in the traditionally, we are not bound by buying locally. I'm bound, I can buy from any part of the world if it makes savings for me. So this is what the Kralzik model is. You split your things, the complete procurement into 2x2 matrix. So on the x-axis is the degree of difficulty and saving opportunity. Difficulty means if I got more suppliers, my difficulty is lower. But if I got very few suppliers, there's a monopoly, then my degree of difficulty becomes higher. Similarly, on the saving side, more I spend, obviously opportunity is on the high side. If I spend less, my spend is less, it is on the low side. I'm covering this because at the end of the day, when we start strategic sourcing process, it is all about spend management. And spend management, we try to do it in these 4 2x2 matrix and try to see which are the one high, medium priority, like in the box 2, lowest priority, highest priority, and the high, medium priorities around. So you can imagine the highest priority come where I got degree of difficulty is low, I got more choices around, but saving opportunity is very high. Naturally, that becomes my highest priority from strategic sourcing. So strategic sourcing, I had to define where do I put a focus on? Highest priority, highest medium priority, this is where we work it out. Okay friend, again this is same classic but in a different modality to do what type of negotiation I can do with different type of suppliers. It all depends on the spend part. If spend is coming under strategic items, it's a different approach. If it's a bottleneck item, it's a different approach. Non-critical items, a different approach. Leverage item, by different approach of negotiation. So this is again I'm putting up in the spend part. So if you guys have understood so far, then I can move to the next ones. So here we try to put the various spends categories, put them into the graph, which category I need to focus on. So now we start the journey for strategic sourcing. So again, I want to repeat few things. Good to understand before I jump into this. After all, it's a process or a methodology. So for this process, I need to understand Kralzik matrix, 2x2 matrix. I need to understand spend analysis. I need to understand the different type of sourcing, like reactive and this, total cost of ownership. So once I've understood those terminology, I'm ready for the journey. Now for this journey, if we want to move from average procurement process, we want to move into world-class strategic sourcing. Keep in mind, it's a time-consuming and very challenging. That's why you need a senior management support around. It has to be top-down. If the top management is not supporting, strategic sourcing is not going to fly. Strategic sourcing is recognized as a value creator. It adds value. It is not simply a process to buy something, it creates a values. Throughout the company, it's a change agent, it's an innovator. Even in the public sectors, even in the US government, now it has been included strategic sourcing as one of the choices available for better procurements. So in the good old days, everybody thought public procurement doesn't need it. When Obama came as a president, I think he ensured it that the public procurement is in line with the latest technologies or latest best practices of private sector. So strategic sourcing has been made, built into the acquisition guidelines. Okay friends, now here we start the 7 steps. So strategic sourcing is a methodology, is a process. 7 steps, very well known for 7 steps. Some people over the time have changed it, some have calling into 5, some are calling into 6. Those who call 5, ultimately activities remain same, but they combine, like 1 and 2 could be combined as 1. So let me walk through each one of them. The very first is analysis. You analyze your data. You analyze your suppliers. You analyze your spend. And the next come, develop commodity teams. You need cross-functional team. Sourcing strategy. What type of source? This is why I explained you in the beginning, sourcing strategy. How should I do it? Will this item be a very leverage item? Is this item a strategic item? Is it a routine item? Should I buy centrally? Or should I decentralize it? Think of big company like MNC which are all over the world. Which item should be centralized? to get the real leverage, which item I should allow people to procure of their own. So this is where sourcing strategy becomes very important to us. Identify and pre-qualify suppliers, supplier selection and contracting, integrating the suppliers, and monitor and follow up. I'll explain further more on this. So this is again same story. So each company has come up with their own approaches around. This is another one who has come up with the 5 steps. So 5-step means spend analysis, build specs, sourcing and supplier qualifications, contract negotiation and implementation. This is how high-level people think around. I'm just giving you the different models around how people use it. The very first one says opportunity assessment. Identify and prioritize. You are buying so many items around. You can't put every item into strategic sourcing. You need to identify which are low-hanging fruits. So which are the item I should focus first, which gives more credibility to your procurement function. If I spread myself into every item, every category, I may not be able to do it. It's very time consuming. Then next in this one is commodity identification. Market analysis. I think it's very important around to understand the supply market. Supply market is evolving, changing. Supply market, I'm talking not within your country or region. It could be over the world. Develop commodity strategy. Execute acquisition strategy. And the last is manage the performance around. This is what the Deloitte made. They also made same thing into 6 steps around. They say first is to assess opportunity, assess internal supply chain, assess supply market, same thing, develop sourcing strategy, implement sourcing strategy, and last is institutionalize. Okay, friends, with this now you got a fairly good idea what are the steps required around. So let me walk through the very first one, assessing the opportunity part. Yeah, I know some people are raising questions. I'll come back soon. So give me another 10 minutes before I walk through this, and then I think the forum is open for the question later. Now actions are, you need to make a time charter, team group around, identify the stakeholders, document size of the buy, then document inventory, then we stratify the buy, communicate the team scope around. Now this is where you need to identify the quick hits around. Okay guys, now let's start with the 7-step process, because traditionally strategic sourcing as taught in the academic world is all 7 steps. Some consulting companies have made 6 steps, some have made 5 steps, but ultimately it is all 7. Some have combined the 2 steps into one and calling as 6. Some have combined 3 into 1. So let me start with the very first one. Now before beginning the first step for a particular category, you need to start the diagnostic. Diagnostic means I'm talking of spend. So there are many good softwares available, but keep in mind the data has to be clean. If data is not clean, then certainly garbage in, garbage out, your spend analysis could be wrong. So diagnostic divides all spend into categories, then divides further spend categories by business units. I may have 20 business units, different locations in X country versus Y country. I need to do those things together. You can imagine 25, 30 years back it was impossible. But nowadays with the computer systems working on a real-time basis, I can collect my data as on today what is spent in each country around. So spend categories are then classified based on competitiveness and compared to the internal impact around. So based on this, I think we try to do the diagnostic once it is complete. Then we try to divide the whole corporate spend into categories. Divide spend category by business unit, locations. And then we also try to do is to offer valuable insights. Keep in mind, your spend should be at least around 80%. I know in many companies, procurement doesn't control the complete spend. Many things are done by individual units. If you want to really get a benefit of it, ensure, this is why I said in the top-down approach, the top management has to support. At least 80% of your spend of procurement has to go through spend management setup. Spend categories should be classified according to supplier market competitiveness. And obviously we talked about Kazakh model. But once you are ready with all the diagnostic, you are ready for the 7 steps. Step 1, fully understand the spend. So you're trying to do historic expenditures and volumes. Expenditures are categorized by commodity and sub-commodity. Expenditure by divisions. Expenditure by supplier. And future demand projection. So demand projection is also important when you are planning to go for strategic sourcing. The next part, step 2, is, now you've done your spend part, that's a very starting point. Second is you go into supplier market assessment. Now supplier market assessment means you're trying to understand, do we have alternate suppliers for this? I have an incumbent already. They might be doing great job, but I need to know who are the other suppliers available. Understand the market supplier marketplace, the trends, and you should also try to look at should cost, because your top management might have told you, this item is a critical item, it's costing me a lot, can you cut down the price by 20%? So you need to develop your should cost analysis upfront. Now step 3 is, again, assess the supply market. I'm just trying to see, identify the potential sources of supply, evaluate industries, perform supplier comparisons, perform supplier assessment, identify opportunities around. This is another one again to do your supplier market analysis. I'm sure many of you are knowledgeable about the Porter forces around, potential interests, existing suppliers, customer choices, substitutes. All these factors work together to give you how 5 forces are working around. Step 3 again I've touched already, and now let's come to step 4, building the strategy part. How competitive the supplier market is. How supportive your company uses to testing incumbent. You know very well, whenever you want to change the supplier, your existing customers in-house, they may not be very happy. They say, guys, we're getting into trouble. I know it's not easy. So your supplier relation management with existing supplier is so nice, people don't want to change it. So what alternative exists to competitive assessment? So these are the step 4 I've walked through with you guys. Step 5. So up to step 4, what you've done is, you've done the diagnostic. That's the very beginning. You did the spend management, category-wise, branch-wise, supplier-wise, product-wise. Then you've done the market also analysis. Now you're ready for, after you've done the 4 steps, now you're ready for doing the bidding process. RFx. X could be a P, X could be I, or X could be anything. I put down in this one slide. So RFx is a competitive process. I'm saying request for, it could be Q like quotation. It could be request for proposal. It could be invitation to bid. Now RFx could cover obviously the specification, delivery, service requirement, evaluation criteria, terms and conditions, T&C, pricing structures. So when I say specs, don't take specs as it is. That's the beautiful thing of having a cross-functional team. In a cross-functional team, I've got engineers, I've got suppliers, I've got all cross-functional people. We can standardize the specs. We can change the specs if it helps us to cut the cost and improve the quality. If in the good old days, my specs was tailor-made for my company, but now I see I can buy ready-made product from a market. Why should I have my custom-made specs? I should go with a custom ready-made product, cut down the cost. So you go through the bidding process and select this one. Selection is the next step 6. So now you went through the bidding process, you select it, you negotiate. Sourcing the team shall be an evaluation criteria, and finally you have to make up a senior executive has to be briefed and make a final approval around. So this covers your 6 steps around. Now come the last step. Last step means you have identified supplier, communication with them. Now if it is an incumbent supplier, then already the supplier known to you shall cover changes in specs in case you have made it. In case you want to make changes in delivery, service, pricing model, should be communicated. If it's a new suppliers, your communication plan should be much more in detail because this is a new supplier in transition. And the risks are potentially higher with the new supplier. Well, friend, this is where I wanted to tell you again, strategic sourcing is a very methodical, it's a very disciplined approach. So these are the 7 steps. This is how you see in all the books and magazines. Some companies, some consulting companies have made 6 steps. Some people have made 5 steps, but it covers in principle all the requirements around. Now here I'm coming the last one before I give the floor back to you for question answers. The strategic sourcing plan process part. So we have understood what goes behind strategic sourcing. Now we're talking of the whole plan process. If I had to do as a manager in your office, I'll define the scope, I'll define the responsibilities, then I will try to do my whole plan outlines. So in the plan outline, what I will do is company business strategies, because I had to align my approach with my business strategies. I have to develop strategic sourcing team. I need to collect the data, historical, annual volume, price changes by suppliers, how much was the lead time, how much the cost improvement history around. Then I will also do is who are my current supplier, their location. So this is what goes behind before I really implement the plan process. Location, share of company spend. If one company I'm buying 80% of their product, naturally I have a leverage to cut down the price. Not at the risk of closing the company, but at least I have a leverage. But if I'm only buying 5% of the supplier's product, naturally I don't have much leverage there. Supplier financial data, the quality part, the delivery part, innovation, is the supplier able to come with innovative ideas around, supplier relationship. So this is what I look at the current supplier. My current processes, how do I select suppliers? Is it the right way? Is it too long? Is it too intensive? Labor intensive? Can I cut down? Can I make use of technologies? So this is where you need to look around. Supply market overview, suppliers and market, buyers and market. Is it a supplier market? Is it a buyer's market? That makes a big difference. The trend, the cost drivers, cost price analysis. I think this is very important around, because most of the time when we negotiate price, we just see, oh, this, we go with the competition, so and so told me this, I go with the lowest price. But the question all the time comes, is it the best price? Have I done my calculation? If based on my calculation, what should be the should cost? If that should cost matches with that supplier cost, then it's fine. Now, strategic sourcing, SS I'm calling as plan objective. You could have a short-term basis, 18 months or less. You could have objective on the long term, where you're trying to do is the total cost improvements, and you're trying to do quality part, innovations, supplier relation management, green initiatives, supplier selection. Keep in mind, all this goes behind my strategic sourcing plan. So the team leader and the cross-function team, they have to work very hard. So most of the organization, what you'll see in the organization structure, there's a separate team for strategic sourcing and there's a separate team for transaction. You may call procurement or you may call reactive procurement. So two are different. So one team is working on strategic part, building up suppliers. And then procurement people who are the other transaction team, they can use this supplier, place orders around. They become simple buyer. Critical success factors, again I'm trying to make it very clear. It has to be a vision there. Internal cooperation is very important around. Top down I'm again calling. End users, data integrity. Data has to be clean. Data has to be clear. And appropriate use of technologies. Strategic sourcing will not fly without the right technology. So technology is a key element to this. On technology, I can say some input that I don't know whether you're all aware. There's a Gartner Magic Matrix. So Gartner Magic Matrix, they do come up with they analyze all the technology in the market, try to put them into different, whether who are the leaders, who are the visionaries, who are laggards. So you can get a fairly good idea of which technology is the most popular one in the today's market, which are the best strength, weakness. They try to give you for each technology. You can access this through even Google on that. Now lastly, before I wrap up, when we talk of strategic sourcing, think strategically. You have to analyze the data. It has to be analytical. It is not just getting 3 quotations and saying, oh, I've got the best price. It is you have to think strategically. What should be the cost? Who are the market? How is the market changing? What is affecting the market? Measure total cost. So you have to move from purchasing price to total cost concept. And you have to work as a team, not as a silos. So friends, with this, this is now I think closes from my presentation side. So let's, I think, open up the questions part around. Arun? So if you can start writing your questions, I'll be very happy to answer those. Okay, friends, I'm just walking through questions. Okay. So what are the main components of strategic sourcing? I think I told you the main components. This came from Sachin. So Sachin came up with this question around the main component of strategic sourcing are, which I told you in the beginning. I mean, there are 7 steps, but the key component is it has to be, it's ongoing process first thing. It has to be disciplines, analytical thing, spend analysis. So I think I covered all those parts around TCOs, so they become the key components for you. Strategic sourcing, another question is, how do we ensure sourcing strategy is supplemented effectively and best ways to measure? I think Harish Kumar Chuka has asked for this questions around sourcing strategy implemented effectively. I think implementation is important, means, again, I told you, it's a top-down approach. You need to have a wonderful team leaders who can carry the team around. It is not a silo team. If it's a silo type function, this will not fly. Then there has to be commitment from Tom to make it more. And the data has to be clean. The data has to be very effective around. The next one is from the College of Management in Hyderabad. India is one of the largest producer of varieties of mangoes. In Andhra Pradesh alone, accounts for 70% of this. And most of them are spoiled and are rotting due to poor post-harvest storing technologies. Now, having booked the forms well in advance, one has to define advantage in terms of sort strength. Exporters exploit this situation. My question is, how can they exploit this? Well, friends, I think your question is not from the sourcing angle. It is more from your supply chain angle. I think we could answer this question off the line because this is more about the supply chain. I did same project for another company like Mother Dairy. They also had same thing from farmer to dining table. So I think we could do this question separately around because this is nothing to do with the strategic sourcing. It is how to optimize the supply chain. So I think I can take care with you separately on this. Okay, the next question is, Kanchan Mala. Kanchan, I know, I'm sorry, I had to come back to your earlier question also. You sent me by email. I tried to come back. So slides are not changing, you said around. Okay, now they're working. I hope you were able to see all the slides later. Okay, now next one is, how important is the freight cost would be if we source? I think this is again a supply chain question. I think Achin has come. Hi Achin, I know you raised a question on Incoterms. My Incoterm is FCA. Do we go to LTA for freight forwarders or now Incoterms is free carrier. That means you are only providing up to the carriers. So it's again with the logistic part and the negotiation strategy, I would call it. Achin, again I'm skipping this question on Incoterms because this is again related to the logistics part, so I don't want to take the whole discussion out. Here we're talking of methodology, process, how to implement strategic sourcing. So it is only about sourcing part, not the distribution, because logistic is part of distribution. Can the value engineering concept, I think Mehraj Ansari has raised a question about the value engineering. I would say yes. Value engineering is very, very important around as part of strategic sourcing. I would say instead of value engineering, I will call value analysis. Because you have the products on the drawing board. See, one has to keep in mind there's a difference between value analysis, value engineering. Value analysis is done once it is on the drawing board. Value engineering is done when the product is already being procured around. So I will use for both stages for strategic sourcing. I'm already buying the product in the past. I could use value engineering. I could change the specs and cut down the cost around. Sachin has come. How we can monitor results of implementing strategic sourcing? It's a very good question, Sachin. Basically, yes, when you're putting so much efforts, so much management time, you want to really see, are we really making savings around? I can tell you from my experience around, the savings could be easily 20 to 25%. Now, how do we measure it? You have been doing in a very traditional way. You know how much money you're spending for X item. Let's say I'm working in Maruti and I'm buying transmission boxes. Now this transmission box costs around 5% of my cost of the car. So sales cost. Now if I can cut down that 5% to 3% or 4%, I'm straight with saving 1 or 2% around. So this is where you need to work it out how much it was costing me earlier. Now I made a long-term arrangement with the supplier. I'm not going through the bidding process every time. I made a long deal with the supplier. And in the process, I'm able to negotiate better. So you will be able to automatically see how much savings you have brought. Plus, you must have seen within your office, you have cut down the processing cost also. So that also saves you. So this can be easily documented. Softwares are available to help us on that. Now, strategic sourcing in Indian SME industries. Do we have any documentation? Yes, SME again is all about leverage. You have to keep in mind strategic sourcing is all about leveraging and spend. Now, if in SME my leverage is very small, so sometimes this may not be practical. So this is where SMEs could make an exchange. Let's say there are 20 SMEs in one place. All SMEs are buying the same raw materials. If you can make a common exchange, then naturally you have a leverage. This is where I can do the strategic sourcing. Hospital industry. I've got 40 hospitals. If each one buys I may not get a leverage, but if I put them together, I get a more leverage. I can make a much more savings and impact on it. So I would say for smaller companies, they need to develop a bigger leverage by joining together with other companies. I remember one case when we had a last time workshop with IBM. One of the guy came from one of the companies. He says, even that was a big automobile company. They said for our small companies, the steel part, we buy on their behalf because that they may not get a good deal. So when they join with the big companies, they get a better deal for that. Now Ravi Chaudhary has come up with a, do we have any documentation knowledge of this? As from my knowledge, Indian companies don't take sourcing seriously. I think you're very right. We are working on it. We did a study recently on procurement, what we call the trends of 2014. Strategic sourcing is still very low edge. Only the few MNCs, few big companies have started getting into this. I would say only 5 to 10% of the companies. While in the Western world, it started in 80s when I was there. It was again same status what we are today in India. Today I would say in the Western and the US, even in the Japan, 60 to 70% companies use strategic sourcing. But the trend is growing up. I see more and more when I see the job are in the carriers openings. People are looking for people, experts who understand strategic sourcing. So it is becoming serious issues. So far it was not there. Now there's a question from Nature is valued by some agencies that as required by CNN, IBM, why only Gully Brothers in Karnataka for coal, Ambani for gas? I think again, I know these are good questions. I'll take up separately with you guys. I think this needs a little bit much more. There's a political component, other is component. So this is a question from Kamakshya. I think I'll come back to you separately. I got your email. I'll get back to you on that. Now this is a question from Ajay now. How can you explain how should the costing is done? Can you provide a detailed case study on this? The costing can be done by, I know some of you must have done ABC analysis part, ABC costing around those with the finance. This is where, I mean, it's again separate agenda item. I don't think I will be able to cover up, justify in the next 1 or 2 minutes. So you really need to work it out, the direct cost, indirect cost. So if I'm trying to buy something, I must know what are the direct costs of the labor, what are the raw material costs around, what are the indirect costs around, then combine the two things around, then I work out my costing. But it's a separate case around. I used to remember when I was doing MBA 35 years back in the US, they used to be called activity-based costing. So it's a big separate subjects around. We can discuss on that. But those of you who are doing certification like CPSM, there's a separate module called cost and finance. And in that cost and finance, there's a lot of focus on how to do price analysis, how to do cost analysis. We do have case study Ravi with us. I think we can share with you some of the one. Now, I think Jack Krishnan has come up with the questions. If you can use strategic sourcing in a supplier dominant market. I agree with you. If it's a supplier market, then they will say, guys, either take it or forget us, or be on the highway. So I got your point. In a strategic sourcing, if I go in a very isolated thinking, it's a supplier market, one will say it will not work. But even in a supplier market, if I'm able to assure them regular partnership, working together, giving a bigger business to them, I think it will help to some extent. Not to that extent, but certainly it will help. In a buyer's market, it helps a lot. But in a supplier market, to some extent, yes. Now, Ravi has come up with a question on some good software on spend management. I think IBM has got Ampertoris. JICAS has got, Ariba has got, there are many around. I don't want to say which is the better one. You have to find your requirements around. Here again I'm quoting you Gartner Magic Quadrant. They have done a wonderful work for all technologies. They'll tell you the strength and weakness of each software, so you can check around which is the best one. So I will not like to say which is better than others, but that I think independent body will tell you which is better now. If you want from me, I can send you the copy of the quadrant I have with me. Actually, I was thinking of showing today, but time was short. Now, Mr. Datta has come with a question. Most of the company use MS Excel. I think that was Ravi's question. How do we improve acceptance behavior within and across the business divisions where onshore and offshore acceptance is critical for selecting a supplier? Based on total cost of ownership, how do I understand the different categories and spend? I think Mr. Datta, you raised a very good point. I know it's a question of carrying the team with you. This is where I said very beginning, it's a top-down approach. Certainly you will play a key role as the chief of procurement, but it has to come from the top down. But obviously proposal has to go from CPO to the top people. So maybe I can help you later on this if you want something on this. I can send you some of the ways how to manage it. Then Sandeep Bhatt has come, category and spend. Is there any website or book to get the on category? Yes, Sandeep, there is a book available. You should go to www.unspsc.org. UNSPSC stands for United Nations Standard Product Standard Classification. This was my baby. I developed in 88, 89, and now independently it's a UNDP product owned by United Nations, but managed by a NGO around in New Jersey. So this is available. I think this will help you a lot. How to implement strategic sourcing in EPC contractor OIL. Now, Neha has raised these questions. Now, Neha, I think is a wonderful question when we talk of EPC contractor. It could be any sectors around. Strategic sourcing are same 7 steps. So there's no difference. You might be in a health sector, you may be in an auto sector. I know it started from auto basically in 80s, but nowadays the strategic sourcing is used in all the sectors around. So you can do it, oil sector, same 7 steps around. If you need any further clarification on those steps, I'll be very happy to link up in your sectors around. Okay, are there any bodies like ISO who certify organizational real practices? I think Mani is asking, is there any ISO certification? No. So far, none. Now, Mr. Nayyar has raised, can we share this presentation in continuation of 7 steps, role of contract performance? Yes. I think this will be uploaded. So whatever we have gone through all the slides today, this will be uploaded today. So by today evening, you should be able to see in our website. And you can also see in the YouTube as well. So when you're trying to go on our side, you can click news and webinars. So when you go to the webinars, you will be able to see it. And YouTube also, you will cover it. Now, I know questions are there from Ravi, Mani, Ajay. Now, also, how do CPIM difference from your exams? Now, Ajay, you raised a good questions around CPIM. Now, that is purely on inventory management, certified professional inventory management. That is a focus only on those people who want to be inventory managers. CPSM is a broad thing. It is for those people in procurement, logistics, distribution, CRM, SRM, who want to grow up as supply chain managers, supply chain leaders. So it's a different, CPSM is for them. Now companies do weightage to this. Now Harish, you have come up with, does approach change from a supply or services sourcing perspective? No. Whether you're doing sourcing of goods or sourcing of this, Harish, there's no change around. I will certainly share the case studies. I'll be sharing, very happy to share some of them. And I think in future we're trying to put all on our website so more and more people can share this. Well, friend, I don't see more questions on this. So if anybody wants to come up. Okay. Neha, you have raised up the question on difference between ISM, CPSM, and CMA equivalent certification. Now here, I don't want to market CPSM per se. It will not be fair or ethical for me. I think you should do is go to the website. Wikipedia has done something, comparison of various international certifications. So I don't want to say much on it. CPSM is the oldest one in the world and the first in the world. So I leave it to you. Check up around Wikipedia how comparison. Each one has its own plus and minus. I will not say. So you have to see what suits you. Those who are working in procurement, I will say CPSM. Those who are working in different fields, they may like to go with different certification. Well, friends, I think this time is getting over. So if anybody wants to raise hand, I can remove the mute and then I can see Ajay is there. Hi Ajay, anything specific?
Nothing specific, sir. Actually, I just wanted to ask you about the same question which I had. Yep. Because you were saying that the CPIM and I mean various other certifications. So since you have already explained it, I think that answers my question which you had. I raised it long back, so yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. Okay, now anybody else wants to raise a hand, I'll then make it. Anyone else who wants to raise, and I can see Neeraj has come up. So Meeraj has come, sorry, Mr. Ansari. Mr. Ansari. Hello, Mr. Ansari. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Ansari. Good morning, good afternoon. Go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, I'm an Indian. I'm working in Saudi Arabia. Okay. So I want to get the certification. Is it possible to register for me?
Oh, yes, certainly. So send us a quick email separately. We'll be happy to answer those questions.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. It was very nice.
No, my friend. Thank you, my friend. Okay, my friend. The next one I'm taking Neha now. Neha, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, Neha. How are you?
Yes, good. Thank you. Sir, actually, earlier I raised a query to ISM on itself. That can I get the question bank for some more questions?
Oh, sure.
Because I'm preparing for exam 1 CPSM and I'm having this diagnostic kit. But I just wanted to be sure, like little more questions or something, because I'm not sure whether this study material is okay or I need to cover it more or how.
How was your scoring? If you, and I don't want to ask in public, but if your scoring is above 80%, you're ready for exam. If scoring is not 80%.
I just started.
Oh, okay. Then, I mean, I think then that shit is good enough to be on a diagnostic kit. If diagnostic kit, if you do it 2 days before exam and you get 80%, you are ready for exam. But I think you can ask me separately. We'll try to send you some more questions. We can send you. Not a big issue. Anybody else wants to raise hands? Okay, friends, with this, I want to thank everyone for your patient hearing. Let's keep the connections on. I mean, the next one we want to do is on negotiation. So, I think Ravi has sent me just now. Yes, good question. Please provide some good reference books apart from textbooks. Yes, I can provide you some extra study materials around. I mean, I'll be happy to. Ravi, if you could send a quick email to us, at least then it gets recorded and somebody will certainly send you an answer for that. Okay, friends, with this I want to thank you all for your patient hearing. I know for many of you must be a weekend time. So again, thanks. I wish you all the best who are appearing for exams. So next, I think what we plan to do is subject like negotiation. If you want us to cover any other subjects, please send us your request. We'll be very happy to cover like this 1 hour session on any subjects relating to supply chain. Actually, we have planned negotiation in the next discussion, but I leave it to you, whatever you. Thanks again, everyone.